New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling.
It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 743 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. Hey, I'm very excited about today's episode. Joining me as my guest today is my friend Howard Brown. Howard is the founder and CEO of RingDNA. Now, sometimes in our work, we are fortunate to meet really smart people who have fresh and unique perspectives on how we can become better at sales. I mean, it's just as individuals and just collectively as a profession. And for me, Howard has been one of those people. Listeners know that I believe success in sales is achieved through the human connections we make and the human connections we develop. And Howard perhaps understands that better than any CEO I've met. And perhaps that's because he holds a PhD in clinical psychology and worked as a practicing therapist before starting his own entrepreneurial career that eventually led him to start RingDNA. So in today's show, Howard and I are going to cover a lot of interesting topics related about this human connection. And we're going to start by talking about how sales reps can become better conversationalists. I really like that term. It's a great description of how reps should think of themselves and the job they need to do. We'll also dive into how tools like RingDNA can help you analyze sales conversations at scale and how to coach reps, how to modify how they communicate in order to achieve better sales outcomes. We'll also get into a number of other topics, including like how to do a better job of onboarding reps, in a way that's really consistent with how people actually learn. Instead of saying we got to onboard people in this fixed period of time, is there a better way to do it that gets the best out of people? And we'll also talk about the science of sales and how we're using all this data we're collecting and how we analyze it and maybe how we can use it better. So we'll get into that and much, much more. And let's do it. Let's jump into it. Howard, welcome to Accelerate.
Hey, Andy, great to see you again.
It's always a pleasure to see you and talk with you. So you're joining us from where today?
Los Angeles, California.
Los Angeles. So this is where we're recording this right before Thanksgiving. So given the weather that's sweeping across the country, probably a good place to be.
Yeah, I have no complaints. I certainly can't complain about weather in Los Angeles when I see what's going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah. So, all right. So for those who aren't familiar, you're the founder, CEO of RingDNA. So just fill listeners in a little bit about what RingDNA does.
So simply, we help sales teams achieve better results through a variety of tools built that we encapsulate as a sales acceleration platform. It could be called sales engagement platform. It could be called sales enablement platform. It could be called RevOps platform. The basic concept is that we help teams perform better. So it's not simply about doing more. It's about being more effective. It's about training your team. It's about helping folks really focus on the things that matter to help their performance.
Music to my ears, as you know. So RingDNA, part of your platform, you sort of compete in this conversational intelligence space with the usual suspects. Sort of interested in your take on how you see that category evolving, right? Because it seems to be very focused now on sort of, I call it sort of fundamental coaching, I guess, but not even sure that's the right term for it. But interested to see what you think about that.
Yeah, so it's funny that we call them the usual players. So we started RingDNA in 2012 with the idea of enhancing reps' performance, providing them contextual information. Really, we provide the telephony as well as the variety of other engagement tools, including SMS and email and those sorts of things.
Right.
And one of the things we noticed early on is that managers wanted the ability to listen into their reps' calls, to provide feedback, to really help them with their sales process and onboarding and training. And once our customers started recording those phone calls, we started analyzing them back in 2014. So when you talk about usual customers, I've seen this influx of new products in the market. But RingDNA has been in the conversation analytics space, really analyzing calls for our customers since 2014. And now we have over 130 million phone calls, which is just a massive amount of data. And we take that data and we really mash that up with all the metadata that comes from Salesforce, from your marketing information, from what actually transpires during the phone call to help reps with better outcomes. So yes, it is coaching. Yes, it is onboarding, and it is analyzing sales conversations. But even more importantly, it's really helping reps be better conversationalists, right? So we can help them do more, but we can also help them be better. And that's what this is really about.
So define conversationalists. And when you say that, are we referring primarily to SDRs, or are we talking about AEs as well?
Yeah, no. So conversationalists, I think of you as a great conversationalist, Andy.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know how to ask the right questions to get to the point, right? And but really, it's about two-way communication, right? If a conversation is simply one way, it's not very effective. And whether it's an AE or an SDR or somebody who's handling inbound, it's really about helping the other person on the phone, right? So for me as a sales rep, my job is to hopefully provide value and value quickly to whomever I'm speaking to, whether I'm an AE, an SDR, a success or support rep. My job is to provide value, and that's where we're primarily focused.
Right. Because it seems like for some of your competitors is that they seem to be so focused primarily on the SDR part of the equation, right? And which has always sort of concerned me. It's like, okay, well, that's a small fraction of the whole sales process. Why not use it for everybody, right? That's, from to your point, AEs, customer success, and so on.
Yeah, I guess for me, coming out of, with my background in clinical psychology, having been a psychologist, really the idea of studying conversations has always been not only top of mind, but truly within my heart, right? How do we help people build rapport, build relationships, better communicate with one another? And with the advent of incredible storage technology and computing power, I'm really able to analyze conversations at scale. So you read these psychology books when you're in your doctoral program and your master's program, and you learn so much, and so much is similar, but it's really hard to apply those theories unless you're one-on-one with clients. And then you don't really get to see the outcome of that unless you work with them over a period of years. You don't know what they're like with their spouse or their children behind the scenes. With the technology we have today, we're actually able to see, we coach someone on how to ask better questions, how to build better rapport, how to address objections. And then through the data we receive, the outcomes, the disposition, the next steps, we're actually able to see if changing how they communicate actually equates to better outcomes. So for me, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm able to analyze conversations at scale, which is so powerful.
So a question, though, and you and I have talked about this offline before, is that, yeah, in this field, there's companies that have, lots of calls or analyzing, and they publish these articles on LinkedIn, which to me are,
say it, Andy, say it.
Pseudoscience, and statistically unsound, right? I mean, that they draw conclusions based on all these variables in the data that aren't controllable. And so, they generalize, right? And there was one recently is, salespeople apologize too much, I guess, was it? And, should only apologize 13% of the time and da-da-da-da-da. And I love the idea of having this data, but only if we can have something meaningful that comes out of it that's not basically clickbait in my mind, is because the variables you got to control for is are they all talking to the same type of customers about the same type of products? It was men selling to men selling to women, I mean, I've got a dozen items that have an impact on that I don't think that don't necessarily revert to the mean over a larger sample size. So how do we
You're speaking my gospel, Andy? I love it.
Okay. So how do we handle that so that we can use these 100 million calls and say, yeah, here's something really meaningful that applies. Yeah, not to say nothing's going to apply to 100% of the people, but as solid science around what people should do.
Yeah, and I think you really you nailed it when you talk about the differentiation between clickbait and true science, right? And I think we live in a world of clickbait today, and true science is usually ignored, and that's because it's harder to get to. So it's one thing to have 130 million phone calls. It's another thing to set up a testing environment that allows you to tweak out all the variables. So to your point, a man speaking to a man speaking to a woman. What stage of a sales process is someone in? What title are they speaking to?
Exactly. What type of product? What's the dollar size? All those things. Right.
Opportunity amount. All of those sort of things need to be tweaked out. And you can't do it with a small sample size. And it's not a one size fits all.
No.
If it was a one size fits all, I'd tell people who came into therapy, hey, just be nicer to each other. Apologize more. Tell your wife you love her. And you know what, Andy, you'd get? A lot of divorced people. You get a lot of miserable people because it's not simple, right? People are complicated. Conversations are dynamic.
Right.
Now, having said that, if you have a large enough sample size and you tweak out the data in a way that you use artificial intelligence, so let's talk about that for a moment.
Sure.
The most important part of artificial intelligence is the questions you ask. You can have a tremendous amount of data, you can have incredible models, but unless you're asking the right questions, you're not going to be able to get at anything that, to your point, is really actionable. So,
and asking the right questions in this sense, in terms of the questions you're asking the algorithm, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So in a sales conversation where the amount is in excess of $500,000, and I'm talking to a VP of sales, and this is my fifth conversation, and they've looked at 5 pieces of content, and they've introduced us into a IT person, and we've already discussed pricing, we've gone through competitor conversations, we've aligned the features and benefits, we've set up a POC. What are the things that my reps are most effective talking about at this stage of the conversation?
Exactly.
That, my friend, is science, as opposed to you should apologize more in this conversation.
Or less in that case. Yeah, right. Well, and right. And I think this then becomes really relevant to sellers because, I think one of the maybe this is human nature. I don't know. You're the psychologist. You tell me. But especially true in the sort of clickbait world. I see even this in behavioral economics, right? Is that we have these books been written, these well-known authors, and they say, okay, if you take these steps to influence somebody in this situation.
Right.
But even in their studies, which for the most part conducted fairly small sample sizes and so on, it was only true a fraction of the time. Right. And yet everybody takes sort of this finding and says, well, 100% of the time, this is what I should be doing. And I think we get this problem is that we're taking these, everybody wants to have a process to follow instead of trusting their intuition, their experience.
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem I see with some companies, the way they're applying conversational intelligence is they're trying to say, look, here's what Jennifer does, and she's number one. So do what Jennifer does, as opposed to saying, to your point earlier, is you're unique. Yeah, we want to coach you to be the best version of you, not a copy of Jennifer.
And you nailed it. That is actually the point, is how do I make you the best you can be, as opposed to trying to turn you into Jennifer.
Right.
And that, look, I think because I'm also a CEO of a company, I think we all have a mandate to grow faster, more revenue, more customers. And I think in an effort to scale quickly, we want that magic bullet. We want the formula. We want the super cadence that works across everything. The problem is, yes, certain things you can build automation towards. Certain things you can standardize. But at the end of the day, the reason you're hiring reps that are athletes or people who are coachable is they require coaching and they're able to take that coaching. But unless you're coaching them, unless you're spending time with them, listening to their phone calls, because it's one thing to analyze 100 million phone calls. It's another thing to analyze 50 of one rep and hear, that rep make the same mistake over and over again. How do I help that rep? And how do I surface the calls where that rep is continuing to make a mistake that is causing them to not close the deal? And that's where you can truly use artificial intelligence across your team. Surface those moments where I can coach this rep, not, hey, give them one quick fix across the team. No, we have 1,000 reps. The reps are of all different levels. They're at different levels of ramping. They have different abilities. How do I help each individual rep? Where are the reps that I need to focus on? And what do I need to focus on to get them to a point where they're now being effective? And then evaluate, how effective was that coaching? Did it in fact work?
Right.
Because just because you've coached someone on something that you've assumed or the technology has surfaced as a coachable moment doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see the benefit of that single coachable moment.
Right.
You have to actually measure the effectiveness of not only the coaching, but the coach. How well did they do it? And how do we coach our coaches to be better?
Well, which brings up I think a global issue that I see is that there's sort of a general consensus among sales that salespeople don't get enough coaching, period. Right. Yep. And as well, a general consensus that we've not done enough to coach our coaches how to coach. Sorry, too many coaches in that sentence. But
I got you, though.
But you got you, okay? So now we bring more technology. It's just not conversational AI, but there'll be other technologies that come in that provide the coaches the ability to provide more specific coaching and a path to greater effectiveness. But if they're not investing the time to do it now, what's the motivation to get them to invest the time to use these tools to effectively coach? And that's to me is sort of a conundrum, right? I mean, are we going to have all this technologies out there that can do these things, but we haven't changed the fundamental underlying culture to say, yeah, we need to. How do we motivate our coaches to coach?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I think at the end of the day, results are what drives change behavior, right? And what we're seeing, and not to sing my own tune here.
Dude, that's why you're on the show.
Well, I'm on the show because I like talking to you, Andy, but I will say that, we just pulled our report, and if we look across our customers, ramp time decreased across all RingDNA customers on average 8 weeks for a ramped rep. So from 33 weeks without RingDNA to 25 weeks. So that's 8 weeks. 8 weeks faster, they're hitting revenue. That's massive. You take that across a team of 100 reps or 1,000 reps, and you're seeing a significant change in revenue.
So let me follow up a question that though is because this triggers a thought is that we've decreased ramp time, but yet we still have this incredible problem with attrition, certainly with SDRs who are onboarding. Is less than a year, roughly a year in the Valley, spoken globally about the tech industry. So we're saying we're onboarding them, we're getting 8 weeks faster, but we're still losing them after a year. So it's not like we get a real marginal gain with that extra 8 weeks if they're disappearing after a year, right? Because we expect to get the full productivity the full second year they're on board.
Correct, but to your point, part of the reason they attrit is because they're not hitting quota, right? And they're getting dissatisfied. So they're not being trained. They're not hitting quota fast enough. I think on average across our customer base, 40.4% had hit quota prior to RingDNA. After using RingDNA for 6 months, we see a 13% increase. Reps will stay longer if they're making more revenue, and we're not turning them into machines. We're actually training them to be better communicators. We're using AI to humanize them, to actually allow them to improve their skills, to improve their performance, to see the benefit of coaching, which helps them with their business acumen, which helps them with all different areas of their personal growth, their professional growth. And that's what matters. And that's what's going to help them see a path to success beyond just SDR, but moving into the AE or management or any other areas of the business. Because if we're training our reps correctly, we're teaching them about business. You can't just throw them in and say, sell these features. You have to teach them. You have to teach them about not only the product they're selling, who cares, but how are they solving problems that real businessmen have every single day? That's what they need to solve for. And when they start to understand that and they connect with people on that and they see the results of their work and their conversations benefiting other businesses, they feel a real sense of self-worth. And that is what keeps people in the job longer.
No matter where your sales team is working from, RingDNA can enable them to be more productive and effective. RingDNA offers a complete platform for remote sales teams that gives reps the tools they need to connect with more prospects and create more opportunities and drive more revenue no matter where they're working from. And managers can get real-time insight they need to coach reps to success. Win more deals from anywhere on the planet with RingDNA. Learn more about how RingDNA helps remote teams at ringdna.com/remote work. That's ringdna.com/remote work.
New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
So let me ask you a question then, is as a follow-up to that, is if we're making our SDRs more skilled,
Yes.
then do we begin to reach a point where we say, well, look, this division between AE and SDR, where we have these specialized roles, maybe that's counterproductive at this point. because if we're making our SDRs that much more skilled at being conversationalists, and we're training them better, and they form that rapport and that bond with the customer, why not let them finish the deal? Why not do, as many companies are these days, actually, is starting to go back and say, well, yeah, maybe we'd have a life cycle sales rep instead of partitioned the way it is currently.
Yeah. Look, I think all is worth evaluating, and I think that's what we can do with the data, right? You're talking about a full stack salesperson, right? Like full
way
stack.
I used to do it.
Yes, top to bottom, carry a bag, knock on the door, have the conversation, build the story, build the use case, do all the work. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I think what you're talking about really is investing in people. And that's what we're trying to help businesses do, invest in the people that they hire. Super expensive to recruit people.
Mm-hmm.
It's super expensive to find them. It's super expensive when they fail or they leave. So let's invest in them. Let's make them the best person they can be within the organization, train them properly, onboard them properly, arm them with the tools they need to hit success, whatever success means to them and their organization, and then they can grow. So I don't disagree with you. I think it's easier to put people in these boxes and sort of, here's what we need to do, and you're going to be an SDR, and this is the training program. But to your point, there's so much attrition that maybe we need to reevaluate that.
Well, and I think that's part of the reason. I think the other part, though, too, is to my belief, and again, you and I have talked about this before, is I think we have this fundamental productivity problem in sales, right? We've certainly in the tech business, SaaS business, the win rates are, I think, unacceptably low. There's no reason for them to be there. And I think part of the contributing factor to that is that this handoff, right?
Yeah.
Because suddenly the customer has to start all over again with somebody again.
That's right.
And part of what you're trying to do, and you and I have talked about this before too, is part of the function of a relationship is to have the customer say, look, I'm going to give you the power to influence me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's fundamentally what that relationship is about, is I'm opening myself up for you to influence the decision that I'm going to make. Well, you're going to two-step that, or if you could just one-step it, think how much quicker you could get to the end result, perhaps, than we do currently.
Yeah. I mean, it's you're building a relationship, right? At its core, I'm allowing you to influence me, which means that I've put some trust in you. And I'm assuming that you're going to lead me down a road where I may or may not choose your application or your service, but you're going to inform me. You're going to help me make a decision. And that decision may or may not be to go with you, but I've built a relationship. And now if I start a relationship with you and, oh, by the way, I've done my job and here's Johnny, and Johnny's going to take it from here, and I don't hear from you anymore, there's one, I'm lacking that continuity. Two,
right.
The trust that we've built just has been broken because I know that Johnny's not you and you're not Johnny. So now I got to get used to another relationship, and he may have another sales technique, and he has a different comp structure, and he's looking at things very differently. And now I'm left feeling like, oh, I just got abandoned. I started talking to her and now I'm ending up with her friends. So what just happened?
Well, and that's friction, right? That's friction in the customer experience. And so if you compare that with an organization that says, look, we're really committed to minimizing that friction because we are trying to help the customer move quickly, which is what the customer wants to do. The customer wants to quickly gather information to make a good decision with the least investment of time possible. If I can help them do that, then I start building that relationship from day one. While they're restarting, trying to build a relationship, we're still on the path that we were on before. And so we're ahead of the game. And I think more companies are seeing that. And I think it may depend a little bit. If you're more transactional product-wise, then sure. Splitting it up the way it is, that's fine. But with any sort of complexity, like what you guys sell and so on, I don't know. I think companies need to rethink about it. I want to go back to a point you had mentioned before, because this whole thing about onboarding is a real interest to me because now, have you read Epstein's book, Range?
Yes.
Yeah. So
you and I always read the same books, Andy.
And so
But yours are my favorite. Now, I have to give you the plug. I have copies of your book all over my office.
Well, thank
Every
you.
new rep is forced to read your book. And
hopefully they don't feel like they're being pressured to read it. But yeah.
well, if they don't, they're fired within the first 3 days. So
there we go. Well, just wait till the new one comes out. So
I'm super psyched.
Yeah, it'll be about a year, but it's coming. So, but it's this idea that people learn at different rates, right? And that's okay. But it certainly seems like, we become so concerned about onboarding time, understandably so. But on the other hand, to your point, is we are dealing with individuals, and I always draw the analogy to like athletes, right? You see somebody come into the NBA, let's take it, or soccer that I follow, highly touted, coming out of college, they'll say into the NBA. But, some guys adapt to the pro game quickly. Some guys take longer. I mean, Steph Curry took better part of a year and a half to, and people were sort of doubting initially, is this going to be the guy? But then it got it. But it doesn't seem like we have the patience to give people the leeway to develop at their own rate. And as a consequence, we miss out on people that could be very, very productive.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is what are we measuring, right? If all we're measuring is their ability to close a deal in X number of days, weeks, or months, we may be missing the whole picture. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about onboarding, we have a bucket of things that people learn about our product, about the industry, about their ability to have conversations with others, their ability to handle pricing objections, deal with competitor mentions, those sort of things. What we're really looking for is improvement, right? So their ability to improve in any of those categories is really for us a leading indicator, right? So I'm not just looking for them to close the deal. I'm looking for them to have more conversations, set up more demos, solve more problems, get greater feedback from our customers, or our prospects, whether they bought or not. I want to learn, what was the sales process like for you, Mr. Prospect? And I don't think people get net promoter scores after people become customers or after they deal with a support issue. But how was that sales process for you? What did you learn? You may not have been interested in buying anything when this person called you, but did you leave that conversation richer? Are you thinking about your problem in a different way? Did they illuminate a different problem than you may have even thought you had? And is this a person you would reach out to when you may be further down in the buying process?
And so raised a great point, because I was writing about this actually this morning, is and talking with a client about it recently, is so do your reps ask those questions of the prospects at the end of each call? Did this call meet your expectations for what you thought was going to happen, so on, which is such a great opportunity to find out, okay, was there value here for the prospect? If there was no value, problematic.
Yeah. And how do we get reps or people in general to a point where they feel safe and comfortable asking for feedback, knowing that not everything's going to be glowing, and to take those lessons learned as an opportunity to grow as opposed to criticism. So I think that what I see a lot in the sales training, in the conversational analytics or intelligence space, is your manager will listen to a call. They'll find 47 things that you did incorrectly during the call. They'll pepper you with everything you need to change about you, and your self-esteem and your performance actually goes down. As opposed to finding a coachable moment or allowing the application to find that coachable moment, training around that, and then testing and measuring if that training in fact benefited this specific rep. Because I'll tell you, if I'm taking a swing in golf and I have some instruction, the guy tells me 12 things I need to improve, my score goes down. I get confused. I get uncomfortable. It's happened to me in basketball and baseball. Don't give me too much, because then I'm trying to swallow it all, and all I do is end up a disaster. And we do that to people, whether they're in sales or any other area. I do it with my kids. Like if I'm giving my kids some advice or I'm giving them some coaching, if I'm giving them too much, they just shut me out.
Yeah.
And so why would we expect anybody else to do anything differently?
Yeah, I always remember back in the 80s reading a paper from these MIT scientists about change management. And they said it's really very simple. Yeah, how you make it successful. Adopt one change, work on it till you've succeeded at it, integrate a second change. Don't do things, in parallel, do them in sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And whether it was the old 80s or now, I think it's still applicable.
Oh, I think it's very applicable. So, as we were talking about AI, we're talking about, rate of improvement. So I guess the question I have is, do you have a metric for rate of improvement? Because to me, I ask this purely self-interest because I think it is one of the real opportunities for us to have a meaningful metric in several dimensions about rate of improvement that really speak to sales productivity as opposed to activity, which is what people sort of count as productivity these days, which is not the case. And I was I was speaking to a group not that long ago, and I was asking this group of CEOs, a private equity firm brought their CEOs together, and I said, well, who's planning on raising quota this year? And they all sort of raised their hand. They're startups. They're trying to grow. I said, great. So how much are you going to do that? Sort of average like 15%. Perfect. Okay. So have your people gotten 15% better this year? I mean, have you invested in the training? You invested in the coaching? Do you have a metric to say, yeah, my people have gotten better? Or are you just raising that number and expecting people to hit it, which is the way.
You had your answer, though, didn't you, Andy?
Well, of course I know what the answer was. But this is the way we operate still in sales is we're just going to arbitrarily raise a number and we don't say, look, have we improved? Has the underlying improvement been there in terms of how we've trained and upskilled our people? And so when you talked about sort of rate of improvement, I just think that is a metric we need to start tracking and developing and tracking for individual reps.
Yeah, give me some examples of areas you would see rate of improvement worth scoring.
Well, it could be types of conversations you're having, right? Is and maybe certain progress points within conversations that are about certain things. In this scenario, has this person over the last 20 instances, have they got a better outcome based on the coaching that we've given them? And so if you see some sort of consistent improvement in specific areas, then you've got something to work on. Yeah. That's why I always, I've advocate we should get rid of quotas and revert to evolve to a productivity metric that has to do with dollars of revenue you generate per hour of actual selling time. Because then that gives me a lot of information about what I need to do to coach up and train up this person to help them get better.
Yeah, that's truly revolutionary, right? And I think it's the idea of figuring out what are the components that make somebody better, right? So your point, we're onboarding people, but onboarding them on what, right? So are we onboarding them on a better conversation? What does a better conversation mean? Well, it may mean asking more open-ended questions where I'm able to collect more information and build better rapport so that at the end of that conversation, when I ask the person, was this conversation helpful? When you do have a need for this, am I somebody you will talk to? It may be in scoring something like competition handling or pricing objections. It may be it's a variety of components within a conversation. Remember, conversations are different. Is it a opening conversation where I'm prospecting? Is it a conversation where I've now brought in a sales engineer and they're helping us design the solution? Like there are a variety of conversations that we need to score around, and we're utilizing the conversation analytics to score different parts of a conversation on different types of conversations to see what is improving. And I think ultimately, as we build those scorecards out and automate all of that part of the process, you can get to a point where we are looking at a metric like productivity by hour or effectiveness by the hour. And that's fascinating.
Yeah. And and I think I'd showed this to you once in the past, is simple call scoring system.
Totally.
There's only 3 outcomes for a call. You made progress, customer's closer to making a decision than they were before you started the call, it's neutral, or it's negative.
That's right.
And I think you can put every interaction you have with a buyer into one of those 3 scores. So I just called it a 1, a 0, or a -1.
Oh, you're so binary, aren't you? You're building my artificial intelligence for us.
Right. And so, if you have something that scores it that simple, and if you ask and, take the first call, is, if you don't make that connection on the first call, then, let's say there's you and a competitor, you're a 1, the max score for the call is a 1, they're a 0. Mm-hmm. Well, suddenly you have the advantage the rest of the way through. Totally. Now, it doesn't mean they're not talking to the other guys, but it's a different relationship. This ability we talked about to earn the trust, to be able to influence them. Yep. They may go through the process, but they didn't let you in to really influence them. Whereas you got in because you did better up front. And I think there's really simple ways to conceptualize this. Your point about scorecard, when you said scorecard, it triggered the thought. Where, then you can start saying, this is really useful information because we find out what the impact is of each of the interactions, but we only find out if we ask.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something else that we've done in lieu of asking. So because RingDNA is different in that we're actually the telecom layer, right? We actually provide the telephony. We're actually the marketing data. We're the calendaring piece of it. We're the email and the SMS. Because we're embedded in so many parts of that process, we're actually able to evaluate things like, did the disposition change in a positive way? The call disposition. Was lead status changed to the next stage? Did opportunity get created? Did the opportunity stage increase or percentage increase? Those they're softer than asking the questions. But because we have all of that data, because we have all the conversation data, we're able to make assumptions that this in fact was a 1 versus a 0 or a -1. And so that's what we've essentially done. We've looked at all of these signals throughout all of the phone calls to make that determination, to then score that call in an automated way, and then look at the parts of the conversation that in fact move the conversation to a 1 versus a 0 or a -1.
Right. And I think that's fantastic. I think if you, in the cases where you can, get the real feedback as well, then suddenly it's like, ooh, rich, right? So, all right, Howard, we could go on forever. Yeah, well, we'll have to try that. So, thank you. Gosh, so tell people how they can learn more about RingDNA and connect with you.
Super simple, ringdna.com, Twitter, RingDNA, Instagram, RingDNA, or just reach out to me, howard@ringdna.com. I look forward to hearing from you all. Andy, it's been an honor and a privilege as always, and I look forward to more time with you as always.
It has been fun. Thanks a lot. So talk to you soon.
Take care. Thanks.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for this week. First of all, I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to thank my guest, Howard Brown. Join me again next week as my guest will be Rob Schell. Rob is the founder and CEO of Cien, and that's C-I-E-N, and you can find it at cien.ai. And we'll be talking about how to use AI to quantify the intangible factors that influence sales results. You'll definitely make sure you check that out next week, so be sure to join Rob and me then. Now, before you go, don't forget to visit andypaul.com and get your copy of my Sales Growth Planner for 2020. Now, this is not too late to create a detailed sales plan for this year, the year that we're in. It's not enough just to say that your plan is to hit your target. How are you going to do that? What concrete steps are you going to take to make it happen? Well, with this planner, I take you by the hand and walk you through a step-by-step process to create an incredibly effective sales plan that will help you hit your targets in 2020. It's the same plan format I've used throughout my sales career, and I think it'll help you as well. So for more information, visit andypaul.com/planner. That's andypaul.com/planner to get your copy today. All right, thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.